Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar comic review. This is going to be my review for the Free Comic Book Day 2022 Avatar and Korra free comic. So you might immediately be wondering, wait, Free Comic Book Day is May 7th, how are you reviewing the book this early? Well, if you've been following things on the fandom recently, you'll know that yesterday was when we got, I suppose, the reveals about what's actually inside the book, because prior to yesterday, we had no clue what this book was about. We had the cover, we had a very general description that basically just said Aang and Korra, but yesterday we got the details, but it was because a fan basically purchased the comic from an eBay seller, which I suppose is a comic book store that had the book, put it up online for sale, and a fan has it and has posted about it. So it speaks to the bad communication by Dark Horse that it took effectively the book quote unquote being leaked for us to even find out what was in it in the first place. So these pages have been passed on to me here to do the review. So that's that. So in the video, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about three things. We're going to be talking about the ATLA section of the book, the Korra section of the book, and also the bad communication surrounding it. So we'll do that at the end, but we'll start with the ATLA section of the book. So the big reveal here, the cover, you can see there with Aang on it, all this hype. The Aang story is actually just a 10-page preview for the upcoming actual full release comic, Avatar The Last Airbender, Chibi Volume 1, Aang's Unfreezing Day. So we get roughly a quarter of this book, 10 pages from Aang's Unfreezing Day. I'm not going to go through the full creative team, just because we already know what it is, because this book isn't new as such. It is our first time seeing preview pages from it, in that there are not preview pages out yet. Because this book keeps getting delayed, it obviously pushes back when preview pages actually come out. Usually it's 2 months before the release of the book. This book is currently has an August 2nd release date, so we probably wouldn't be expecting preview pages until probably July, maybe June if they were trying to put them out a little bit earlier. So this is technically a rather early preview, if not for the fact that this book has been delayed by over a year. If this book had kept its original release date, it would be out July 2021, or if you go by its second release date, September 2021. But it has been delayed so much that it is now coming out in August, well over a year after its originally scheduled date. So immediately there's a sense of disappointment there, because everyone was expecting a new story. And we'll get into the fact that that wasn't just us as fans assuming it. They basically said it was the case, but we'll discuss that later. We're discussing what's actually in the comic, which is a 10-page preview of Aang's Unfreezing Day. My general thoughts on the book are that it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it's not exactly mind-blowing new Avatar content. As the only Avatar comic release of the year, both in terms of this preview and then when the book actually comes out, if it comes out this year, it doesn't really live up to those expectations, because we're used to years when we've had multiple parts of a comic trilogy. We've had other short stories that are much better, like last year's Avatar short story Matcha Makers with Iroh was really good. This seems fine. My thoughts on this in terms of the canonicity of it is that, to me, my interpretation of this is probably that it is canon. It is just using the chibi art style. Because so far, they don't seem to be going so over the top with the fact that it's chibi, that it is more in line with the chibi shorts, where crazy stuff happens all the time, and characters who probably shouldn't be in a scene with other characters are here. That's not really happening here. We'll see how crazy things get towards the end of it, I suppose. But from what we see here, this does just seem like a relatively straightforward telling of what this story is about. So the idea of Aang's Unfreezing Day, most of this context is from the description for the book, is basically that Aang doesn't actually know when his birthday is. That's one of the kind of negatives of him being trapped in the ice. So it seems like the rest of the team is going to treat the day he was unfrozen from the iceberg as basically being his new birthday. So they're planning sort of a secret surprise birthday for Aang, and as we open up the pages here, he is basically being kept out of the loop. So we sort of start off here. Aang wakes up. There's a note on him and loads of other notes scattered around the house that I suppose they're staying in that are basically Sokka just saying, stay in the house. Seriously, just stay there. We'll be back later. And this just makes Aang more and more suspicious of what's going on because there's so many messages. It's so clear that they're hiding something from him. Like literally there's messages all over the house. So he really wants to know what's going on. And, you know, the notes are kind of funny because they're just, no, seriously, Aang, stop making this a big deal. As in, Sokka is aware about the reaction that Aang was going to have, and the notes get continuously more like, please stop doing this, just sit down. So Aang goes outside. There's even a note on the ground that says, Aang, go back in. So, pretty fun. The art is actually quite nice. I've always liked the chibi style, and I think for, I guess, a less important story, I think this art actually works relatively well. It allows you to do kind of some dynamic stuff without the art being too complicated, so that's pretty good. So Aang rushes out. Obviously this is set in Ba Sing Se, so he goes out to the sort of the streets, and there is Toph. Toph is kind of wheeling along this cart of supplies. You don't really get a good look at them, but it's clearly supplies for Aang's celebration. And basically we just get the idea that she's trying to play it cool, but then Aang tries to look at what she has. She puts up an earth wall and has to get sort of a little bit more aggressive with Aang of like, stay out of my business, Aang, as she's doing kind of earthbending this whole time as Aang is just trying to get a peek at it. And eventually Aang is trying so much to do it that she has to get a bit more aggressive. She does some pretty big earthbending at him. He does deflect it away, but sort of just walks off. Aang realizes that, fine, I'm not going to get anywhere with Toph here, I'm just walking away. So, just from the Toph interaction, I think you can tell the approach that is going to happen here. Aang's going to sort of interact with all of the main cast and kind of be rebuffed like this and feel that like, oh, this is a terrible day for me. Like everyone seems to be just ignoring me. And then he'll go back to the house and the party will be there and that'll be how things happen. I'm guessing that's how it will play out. But we do get the next scene, which is that he's walking along a path and sees Katara. So Katara is waterbending water into some barrels, I guess in preparation as well for the party. And when she sees Aang coming over, she's like, and drops the water on both of them. Aang airbends it off. So, there's some fun, dynamics going on here. It's like Chibi Book 3 Katara, so it's actually quite cool to see. And yeah, he's asking what's going on with the barrels, and Katara's excuse here throughout all of this is, don't worry, Aang, it's just Water Tribe stuff. Water Tribe stuff, what are you doing here? You should probably listen to what Toph said and stay out of this. And Aang's getting quite frustrated by all of this, and she just kind of freaks out and is just like, Aang, I've got Water Tribe things to do, just please go back to the house. So Aang is forced to, another sad moment, walk away from Katara this time. And he's walking through the city again and is like, oh, hey, the Jasmine Dragon. Maybe Zuko and Iroh will tell me what's going on. And so that's where the preview ends with, I guess, him about to meet Iroh and maybe Zuko. I'm guessing they're both in there since they were mentioned in the dialogue. Interestingly, it says to be continued July 2022. So obviously when they printed this, they thought July was the date, but it's actually now August. So immediately that's out of date as well. So it makes me kind of feel like, okay, there might be something to this comic. I don't think there's going to be anything huge to it necessarily, but I think it's just going to be a fun, thing. And if they create any sense of emotion surrounding, like Aang actually having a birthday now to celebrate and whatever way they do the celebration, that could be quite good. It's hard to say exactly when it's set, because all the characters seem to be in their book 3 outfits. Like, it's Aang, not in his like comic outfit, it is his book 3 outfit, so he still has the sort of Fire Nation pants on. And so I'm guessing this is probably set somewhere in the gap in between the end of ATLA and when The Promise has its kind of like time skip thing. I think that roughly would make sense, where it's maybe before Aang fully changes his outfit to be like, you know, his new more full airbender kind of attire. But it's also the chibi art style, so maybe we're not meant to read too much into design continuity. So, you know, my general thoughts on this one are just kind of like, it seems canon so far, in that I expected, as a chibi comic, it to be a way more over the top than it actually is. It seems relatively normal. You can tell it's a little bit more simple. It's definitely more aimed at young readers here, just with the simplicity of the dialogue, and there's not really being a lot of like, you know, detail going on, anything new. But it looks like it's going to be at least okay when it releases. Definitely, I think, not up to par as like the only Avatar comic release of the year, but it looks okay. Now, let's switch things over to the Korra comic. This is the thing that actually got people excited. There's obviously the discussion around like what exactly happened with the ATLA comic, but the one excitement was we're pretty close still to the Korra 10-year anniversary. So here's the piece of content that's actually out close to the release. So we get the new Korra short story, Beach Wars, written and drawn by Meredith McLaren. So yeah, as expected, it is a beach-themed Korra story. Now, everyone has probably seen the main page that was put out to sort of, you know, preview this in a way. So we have here on the beach, Katara, Toph. We've got Jinora, Iki, Milo, Asami, Korra, Opal, and Bolin. And that's everyone. No other characters like arrive on the scene or anything like that. So the big characters missing from this are Mako, 100%, Team Avatar member, the only one who's not here. And then, since Jinora is in the scene, it kind of feels like if Opal's here, why can't Kai be here as well to be there with Jinora? There's definitely some missed opportunities here in terms of, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things with this book, not a lot of the characters get a huge chance to shine. So adding in a few more, I don't think changes things too much. This is beginning to feel a little bit like the Suki situation we had a while back, where it felt like Suki was left out of every Team Avatar thing, and there had to be a little bit of a fan kind of backlash to finally get stuff like Suki alone to happen, her be included in more pieces of art that include the characters and so on. And it's beginning to feel that way of like, why is just Mako left out? Like, seriously, like, why isn't Mako in this? There's no dialogue to explain why he's not here. The same with other characters. Like, there's no real explanation for, like, how this, like, everyone arriving at the beach happened. It's just, like, we're here. So, let's jump into this and kind of go through it. So, the opening dialogue is Katara and Toph talking to each other, because that's sort of the main dynamic of the book. Always good to see you, Toph. And she's like, meh, I'm not thrilled to be back in Republic City, but getting to spend time with Opal is worth the hassle. So we see the idea here. Jinora is reading. Korra and Asami are just sort of like sunbathing. Korra specifically is basically just resting, more or less. Bolin is doing some sandbending, or trying to sandbend in front of Opal to impress her. And yeah, Iki and Milo are the ones playing. So there's not too much like going on as such, but we'll continue on. So on the next page, Bolin talks to Opal and is like, hey, I'm really trying here. Are you not impressed by my sand sculpture? And she's like, oh, it's beautiful. I just can't take you seriously because you have these drawn on cat whiskers on your face. So this is the start of the whole prank thing, is that Milo pranked Bolin like before the story actually took place, and drew these cat whiskers on Bolin. So he's just like, you can't take your eyes off that kid for a second. Although I can't help but feel like it makes me more distinguished. This is probably one of the main dynamics of the book, in that like the main characters here are probably Katara, Toph, and then Bolin probably gets the most dialogue because they're having fun, and he's like the fun character that they have here. So Katara just notes about this. The prank war continues. You know, Toph, I remember when you and I couldn't go a few days without trying to one-up each other. Toph laughs. Katara says, you were ruthless. You bent pebbles up my nose if you caught me asleep. And Toph says, yeah, but you ice bent a slide right underneath me. I slid down a mountain into a porcupine den. And the two of them are just like, okay, those pranks were pretty intense back then. Katara says, if I remember right, you once metal bent my furniture to the ceiling. And if I remember right, you once hid my turtle duck in my office. It took me days to find it, and it laid eggs. So again, just, Katara and Toph, they play pranks on each other. They have a little bit more of an antagonistic relationship between each other compared to most members of Team Avatar. And they're like, those were good times, huh? Oh yeah, the best. But it's in a panel where you can tell the prank war is maybe just about to resume once again. And that's really it in terms of the sort of reminiscing of the chapter. Like, that seems to be the core dynamic that they're going for here, is just Katara and Toph hanging out and discussing their, previous prank wars as potentially a prank war is about to take place. But we cut over to, like, one of the few scenes with, like, the other characters actually, like, talking. Like, Asami just says to Korra, something's happening. And Korra is just like, yeah, let it happen. Like, she's not interested right now. She just wants to relax. It's a vacation. That's really it. So, at this point, Katara and Toph get up. Are we really doing this? Oh, yeah, we are. And she just immediately sand bends some sand over the top of Bolin and Opal. So, Katara and Toph both scream out at the same time, children, huddle up. And Asami's getting worried about this. And it's like, Korra, the grandmas are plotting. And again, Korra just says, nope, vacation, relax now. So effectively, we've got this sort of team dynamic. Katara goes over to the Air Kids, and that's her team. Toph goes over to Bolin and Opal, that's her team. And then Asami and Korra are just not involved in the middle. So, Janora's like, why are we pranking Toph? I mean, I can give her a mustache too, Milo says, but I don't want people thinking I'm a one-note pranker. And Katara says, children, if there's anything I know, it's the maniacal mind of Toph Beifong. And right now, she's over there conniving, as she points over to Toph and her group. We cut over to that group, and Opal's like, you want us to prank children? Is that right, Toph? No. I want you to prank Katara. But if there's collateral damage, that's not our problem. But why? Getting a rise out of Katara is my proudest tradition, and it's been years. Have a little fun. Honestly, Opal, why are you being such a stick in the mud? Riling you up is almost as hard as it is with Lin. And Bolin is like, I know. And he comes up with this plan that's not really all that great, of like, I'll secretly bend their towels out from underneath them. Opal notes that you're just barely getting the hang of sandbending. I don't think that's going to work. We convinced them that the beach is infested with sand moles, notoriously famous for stealing people's towels. The only thing that can deter them is the smell of garlic. The kids will have to eat heaps and heaps of it to keep their towels. And then once they're all annoyed with how much they smell, we can yell, surprise, there are no sand moles. And it's just this, okay, planned prank. And Toph and Opal are just like, nah, no. And Toph does note to Opal, kind of fun here, this is the boy for you, huh? And Opal's like, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay. So then we cut over to basically, effectively, like, the prank war doesn't actually happen. The pranks are all, like, planning pranks here. So what we get now is sort of a little montage here of Milo comes up with a planned prank, Opal comes up with a planned prank, Janora does, and Bolin comes up with another one. All the time, Korra begins to have more and more of a reaction. Like, she's got a towel over her face, so you can't really see her eyes, but you can just see her mouth just beginning to, like, go from just being sort of calm to just, like, getting more and more annoyed that her relaxation is going to be ruined by this prank war happening. So Milo's one is, how about a bunch of Pellypuffins spicy bean cakes? How about, like, we feed a bunch of Pellypuffin spicy bean cakes, then startle them into flying over Toph and pooping everywhere. not great. Opal comes up, what about we mix wasabi in their shaved ice? Okay. Jinora says, we blow sand over all their food. And then Bolin finally comes up with a good prank, in that like Toph at least likes it. We replace all their suntan oil with flaming hot pepper jelly. They'll think they're getting sunburned. Put on more oil and burn even more. And Toph is laughing in the background like, I changed my mind, Opal. This boy's a keeper. So at this point, Korra says, there's no way this can end well for me. Avatar intervention time. She gets up, just says, everyone chill out, and basically just like gets up, does a little bit of a stretch like this, and basically a whole wave of water comes in, washes over everyone, stopping the kind of prank war. She does put her hands out to waterbend the water away from her and Asami, but Toph gets hit with it, Katara gets hit with it, everyone else does. And Toph just says, oh, Avatar, you've made a terrible mistake. Katara says, start feeding the Pellepuffins. Non-combatant neutral party is what Asami says. I suddenly have regrets is what Korra says. And the others are like, run away. The end, question mark. So, it's fun. It's nice. But I definitely expected more. Previous Korra Free Comic Book Day books have been better. Last year's one was very, very good. The one before that, Lost Pets, I thought was, solid without being amazing. And then the first one, of course, Friends for Life, where Korra meets Naga, was really, really good. I feel this sort of makes it like 2-2, in the sense that we have two very good ones. We have one that's somewhere in the middle, and then this one I think is somewhere around the same. It's just the case where, like, I think the cast could have been used a little bit better. I wasn't a huge fan of the way the sort of like prank war actually went, in that like it didn't actually happen and it was just them theorizing over it, and then it ends with the prank war just about to start, which kind of asks for a sequel, but we're never going to get a sequel, and it just feels like I think some of the page count here could have been much better used. I think people, when they get around to reading this, will like some of what happens here. But it's hard to ignore the fact that, like, say, Mako's not here, Kai isn't here, nothing explained for why they aren't around or anything like that. Again, no real context given for, like, how the crew just ended up here kind of randomly either. So definitely the writing I don't think was, like, amazing here. But it's also not, like, a hugely, like this. I don't have huge problems with this either. It's just, okay. And that's sort of the way I feel about both of these things. It's just like, new Korra content is good because we don't get that much of it. And this doesn't feel like it quite lives up to the kind of standards that we maybe expected. And that, like, Korrasami fans, I think, are just going to be a little bit disappointed that they didn't really interact much here. We didn't get a chance to have Kai and Jinora interact, even though theoretically it could have happened. Bolin and Opal have a few moments, but it's very reminiscent of like stuff we've seen from them before. And then the fact that it is sort of like almost like a copy of like the Sokka-Suki dynamic from the start of the finale, the first episode of the finale, with the sand sculpture type thing, isn't kind of like great. In that the main takeaway from this is probably that Bolin has done a little bit of work on sandbending. And that's the most kind of interesting thing about it. I appreciate them, I suppose, bringing up the unique dynamic that Katara and Toph have, in that they get on well, but there is a tendency for them to sort of like argue and be competitive with each other. I like that has continued to this time. But definitely just come out of this feeling like I wanted a little bit more. I wanted a takeaway for like a character, at least one of them, that something notable is happening here. But like Iki was like basically not really used in this book. Jinora barely really gets a chance to do much. There's just some things here that make it feel like, yeah, this could have been better, I think. So, definitely, get it. If you're a Korra fan, you'll want to read this probably, but it's not something where I feel like you need to rush out, do everything you can to get this. Like, yeah, just wait for it to come out. It'll be fine. I don't have any super strong feelings about like either of these. It makes me slightly more excited for the ATLA chibi comic, but not too much. And then, yeah, what could have been a really strong premise of like the Korra beach episode is just let down by a few disappointing elements, lack of inclusion of certain characters and so on, and all that. Now, final thing to get into is the fact that it was not the plan with this book from the start that the Avatar section would be the preview pages for the chibi comic. I'm going to open up a post from Dark Horse from just last month. You can see it up here. 3/9/2022. So less than a month and a half ago, give or take. It's basically Dark Horse detailing all this stuff. I think the official cover had just been revealed, full colored version. And you'll see this line here. The Avatar The Last Airbender short story will be written by Amy Chu and illustrated by Kicking Shoes. Kicking Shoes are the ones who do the art here for the cover. So you can see the sort of connection here. Some of this happened, some of this didn't happen. The Korra story will be written and illustrated by Meredith McLaren. So the Korra story, no problem. But this is blatantly not what is in the actual Free Comic Book Day book. What happened here? Now, someone asked on Facebook, Dark Horse specifically, what is the situation here? Can you clarify what is in the Avatar Free Comic Book Day book this year? If it's not the short story by Amy Chu, will that be released at a later date or is it cancelled? Thanks. And then they link the article that I just showed you here, this one, confirming the Amy Chu stuff. And their response is that the comic will include the Amy Chu short story, but it doesn't. It just blatantly doesn't include that. So what happened here? Because again, that post is only from about a month ago. The Free Comic Book Day books are like officially announced to us in like late December. So that's how long we've known about this book existing. And I believe Kicking Shoes were on the creative team listing for that book for the majority of the time. And obviously, even now, Dark Horse are still thinking that Amy Chu short story actually like happened to some degree. But it's not. The preview pages for the chibi comic are not out anywhere except in this comic. So something somewhere has happened here where this book has either been taken out, it wasn't ready in time, or something like that. The only answer I could theoretically have is that maybe how early they had to have these printed to get to comic stores. Maybe they couldn't get the Avatar comic in time. But the digital release, when they finally do that, might actually have the news story in it. But that would be just silly, I think, if that was the case. So I still am left really in the dark about what has happened here with this book. Because a nice, like, proper new short story involving Aang, potentially like during the book 3 kind of time period, I think could have made this. And that it would have, I think, slightly changed the perceptions on the Korra comic as well. And that like we had maybe a little bit more of a serious solo Aang story. And then the fun on the beach would have just been the extra. Because again, look at the cover. ATLA on the front, featuring Korra. So Korra is more of the side story. Whereas if you remember last year's Free Comic Book Day, it was actually the Korra story on the cover, and it was the ATLA story that was the side one, which made sense because Clearing the Air was a more sort of serious, significant story, whereas the Aang story was, the ATLA story was kind of an Iroh character focus, fun in the tea shop type thing. This book definitely just feels like it was missing just a little bit of notable content that maybe this Aang story, whatever it is or whatever it was planned to be, could have been. So, more or less going to wrap things up there with just the idea that, look, when Free Comic Book Day hits, absolutely go out and get this. Add it to your collection. I'm going to be trying to get a physical copy of this myself as well. But I think it's pretty fair to say I found this disappointing. One, because we didn't get a new Avatar story and it was just preview pages for the Chibi book. And we're going to get preview pages for that book anyway, because basically all comics get preview pages. So there's nothing particularly unique about the fact that we get preview pages in this book. It's just that we happen to get them a little bit earlier. So that's only so-so. The Korra comic had the potential to be good and I think was fine, but it overall makes the book not really have anything super significant in it. And given that content at the moment is in a bit of a weird spot, because obviously all the books are getting delayed. The Chibi comic isn't out for another 4 months. It's September for Patterns in Time. And then there's going to be some confusion about, like, I'm guessing this Beach Wars comic will now probably be in Patterns in Time. I'm assuming the delays might have worked out to allow that to happen, but given that it was originally scheduled for April, that might not be the case. So the only new comic content we've got is obviously the Chibi comic and potentially 2 or 3 stories, about half of the page count of Patterns in Time. Otherwise, everything is on the Yang Chen book. If that announcement didn't happen, this year would not be looking very good, because it's been ages since they've announced a new comic and we really need some significant comics. So, gonna wrap up the review there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on just what happened with this book, preview pages for Chibi comic, Beach Wars being the Korra comic, and just the weird communication about what has or has not happened with that Amy Chu written Aang story. So that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.